Alex Coffey's with us to give us the big picture and take a look at that. Tell us more about what you're watching. And of course, the PPI reaction after the cooler yesterday, the CPI, that brought some optimism. And now, again, right?
Yeah, this one had a little bit of revisions, though, that were a little bit warmer. All things considered, though, Nicole, kind of more of the same, which is relatively anemic inflation data. We also got initial jobless claims, which continue to slightly uptick as they approach that 250,000 mark. This week coming in at 248. When you look at the 4-week average, it continues to uptick. It's now at 240. These are still relatively low numbers, but it does go to show the labor market perhaps starting to slide just a bit. PPI final demand month over month was just 0.1%. The survey looking for a 0.2% climb. Ex-food and energy the same, 0.1%. It was expected to be at 0.3%. Both of those figures, though, did see pretty steep revisions. When you look at the one non-core, just for headline month over month, it was revised from 0.5% of deflation to just 0.2% to the negative, and a similar revision for core. Year over year, these figures are 3% and 2.6% rather. So all in all, more the same, kind of the same picture painted by CPI. Combine that with the labor market data, one would think this is starting to make the job relatively easy for the Fed. You got labor market data getting worse, and you got inflation data getting better. We'll see what they think.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I can't wait to hear from the Fed next week. I think it'll be an interesting conversation, too. When we hear more from the Q&A from Powell, also just some of the elements have changed, right? You had a conversation between Powell and Trump, not necessarily about the rate moves, but certainly about the tariffs and what they could mean. In fact, Trump and his team, and also Andrew Brenner, who was here, feel that the tariffs could, in fact, be deflationary and slow the economy. They don't think there's going to be an inflation spike. So what a difference. And he spent time explaining that. So it'll be interesting to hear more about that, his views, maybe if in any way they changed after this conversation. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that there's evidence to support that line of thinking. I mean, you look back to the first round of tariffs in Trump 1.0, certainly didn't cause inflation then. I always go back to, I think this was something, basically that Scott Besson has said, multiple times, which is if Apple could charge $3,000 for an iPhone, they would be charging $3,000 for an iPhone. So it's going to probably impact prices a little bit in certain things, but it's also going to compress margins. It's not going to be every single tariff is passed on to consumers. It's also not going to be every single tariff is, going to be taken on by the exporters, in other countries. It's going to be across the entire chain. So it likely will have some sort of deflationary effects on the economy, but maybe very short-term stagflationary-like results. But it hasn't shown up in the numbers. So at some point, you look at these the inflation data and you'd say, well, I thought we would have seen it by now. I mean, we're several months into the tariff discussion. Now, I know that there was those pauses, but if you're a company and you're looking to, pass these costs on, maybe you'd front run that a little bit and try to do that already. We're not really seeing that. So time will tell. My guess is the Fed will continue their cagey approach and not really give us much and say, hey, we need to see more data.
Yeah, understood. Turning your attention, folks, over to a sad story this morning. And we are watching Boeing stock under pressure on the heels of a crash, a catastrophe, a fatal crash, Air India to London, from India in Western India, crashing, hundreds on board, over 200. Tell us a little bit about the Boeing story here today.
Yeah, looking at this particular story, Air India looks like has confirmed it. We also have, obviously, investigation. So this story, we've gotten more details as it's come out. But 787-8 aircraft, it looks like there were 242 passengers. It crashed shortly after takeoff, as you said, from India on its way to London's Gatwick Airport. Market impact, though, is when you look at this 787 Dreamliner crash, it's renewing kind of the uncertainty and uneasiness around Boeing's safety record of recent years. And it's really, pretty tough timing. I was just saying the other day, it feels like Boeing's finally turned the page, and maybe, those who have been patient have finally been started to be rewarded. But certainly a setback on that front. You see Boeing shares today, they're down about, 6-7%, and this is with them off their lows pre-market. Some of the primary suppliers for Boeing aircrafts, think GE Aerospace, think Spirit AeroSystems. Both of those names are lower here in the pre-market. So, yeah, not the story anybody wants to wake up and read today, particularly those obviously with any type of ties to this. But from a market standpoint, anybody with ties to these names in the Boeing supply chain.
Yeah, and I will say about the 787 in particular, since its launch, has really enjoyed a very good safety record. And I know Boeing was under the microscope for safety issues, for production issues, some terrible PR stories over the years. But this particular 787, it's a major incident because it has enjoyed one of the best safety records in commercial aviation since its launch. So it's an unusual story, of course. There's so much to unravel there because they have to get the black box, they have to get the flight recorders, etc. So there's so much to come following that. In the meantime, that's going to it's down 5.5%. So that's certainly going to pressure the Dow Jones Industrial Average today. A final quick thought, Alex?
Yeah, I think your last point is the critical one. Yeah, the market impact, it's going to weigh on the Dow today. But look, there's more details that are to come out on this story. But Boeing just isn't in the place right now where investors or the street or the public gives it the benefit of the doubt. Now, it may come out that it's not Boeing's fault at all, but we just don't have those details yet.
Yeah, understood. All right, Alex Coffey, great to see you this morning. Folks, we're down about 0.25% for stocks this morning after inflation prints coming in a bit cooler 2 days in a row. So that's some good news there.